All right, y'all. So I am planning on doing a best albums of 2024 so far list really soon. But today I wanted to do something a little different. And to do that, I had to get into my backpack abstract rap zone heavy. And I want to talk about an essential underground West Coast album from the 90s that is slept on. But if you know, you know. What is good, y'all? It's your boy Mixtape Muff. If you are rocking with this content, go ahead and smash that like button for your boy. Also, subscribe if you haven't. But today, I'm going to be revisiting this Aceyalone album from 1998 entitled A Book of Human Language. So, Aceyalone is this prolific Los Angeles MC who was a member of the Freestyle Fellowship as well as the Project Blowed Collective. Now, I don't claim to have heard every Aceyalone project that exists, but I do know that his mid to late 90s to early 2000s material always stands out as being some of the best underground hip hop from the West Coast. I mean, the man could be looked at as a pioneer for West Coast conscious rap or just West Coast abstract rap. But getting right into this release, this 1998 project is basically a concept album on life. Each song represents a chapter in his book of human language. It was produced entirely by his in-house producer Mumbles, and there are 15 chapters, well, 20 tracks in total, and some spoken word interludes. But this thing lasts about an hour and 9 minutes. But with that being said, let me go ahead and just hit y'all with that track by track breakdown. The opener, Forward, is just an instrumental interlude built around some muddy drums and mystical keys. It's just setting a tone in a cinematic way. Track 2, The Guidelines, is one of the standouts, and it's the most rough and raw on the project for sure, and probably one of the most straightforward tracks on this album. And it's set to a rugged bass line and some magical keyboards. Really, the instrumental in his flow here reminds me a lot of the Hieroglyphics crew. There's a lot of witty wordplay, clever schemes, and just imaginative lyricism altogether. And on this one, he's attempting to redefine your hip hop guidelines. So he's urging MCs to, think outside the box and be creative. Some standout lines were, "'Cause I'd rather stimulate your mind and emulate your purpose, and we only have touched on the surface of the serpent." Track 3, Contents, is just an interlude where Aceyalone introduces the album and mentions that it'll be broken down into 15 chapters, and that takes us right into The Balance. One of my favorites. I just love the rhythmic bass line and the funky, almost transcendental keys. And you guessed it, here he's talking about the need for balance, the yin and the yang, the good versus evil, the love versus hate, through it all, you gotta strive for that balance. There are a lot of jewels to ponder about, as Aceyalone states. It's the half and half hypothesis, the 50-50 theory. Eerie as it may seem, check your balance beam. I also dug, it's like love and hate, same emotion, different weight. Steve. Right after is The Energy, a spoken word piece over a faster pace, but still moody instrumental. But here he is radiating some positive energy by speaking on things like police yourself, increase your wealth so that you can live longer and stronger. Following this is The Hurt, where we get these off-kilter drums, a jazzy bass line, and I really dug just the unorthodox flow he was using. On this one, he's basically speaking on the pain of growing up in the ghetto, the trauma he faced, and he talks about the more he looks around, the more it hurts. This then blends right into track 7, The Hold, where he advocates for just letting things go. If you can't hold on, sometimes you just gotta let it go. And The Hold was built around a funky bass line with some psychedelic pianos, but it still had that drenched in Cali funk feel. But I'd say Aceyalone was really embracing that Eastern spiritual philosophy of just letting things go. Immediately after is one of my favorites, The Walls and Windows. Now, this has such an ominous, surreal backdrop. It is pretty trippy. But on this record, he's speaking on the walls and the windows, representing a multitude of things. Now, it could be the universe or God watching, for instance, or, if you're looking at it through a street lens, you may look at it as the streets are watching or law enforcement is watching. Perhaps it's even the government doing surveillance or checking your movements, or it could just be about the eyes being the windows to the soul. But those are just my interpretations. Maybe he was talking about much more, but it did make me feel really smart listening to it nonetheless. One of the standout bars from this was, "The walls outside of my apartment complex building projects are so complex, yet they are all taken out of context." So yeah, overall, this is a very strange song, but one of the best. Following this is the Jabberwocky, and it's just Aceyalone reading from the Lewis Carroll poem, the Jabberwocky. So you had that almost Disney storybook fantasy mixed in with some horror. This transitions perfectly into another one of the highlights, the grandfather clock. My grandfather clock goes tick tock. The hook is so entrancing, and the beat is so uniquely dark, almost like an Illuminati ritual. And there's the sound of that old-fashioned grandfather clock too. And this record immediately made me think of when Nas said, "No need to check the clock, the streets will time you." There's a whole lot of haunting imagery here as he's speaking on the reality that all living organisms, we're on the clock. We all have an expiration date. Some noteworthy bars were, "You can't escape the master of time. No one is immune. The hands of time will grab you when the moment's opportune." There is a change in pace with the reason, where it's set to some lively horns, giving off that blaxploitation era sound. But on this little interlude, he's like summarizing everything thus far. The subsequent track is The March, and it's backed by some brisk drums and an ethereal sax. And on this one, he's basically talking about, in the game, some will win, some will lose, but you gotta keep marching on regardless. Next is The Vision, a clever spoken word moment where he reflects on having a vision over a slick sax loop that did give me some Primo-like vibes. Afterwards is The Faces, another one of the high points. I just love the guitar, the psychedelic keys, the horns, and this just had a very warm LA summer nights kind of quality to it. But Aceyalone was really rapping with some urgency here, speaking on a plethora of stuff, but mostly about appearances and how people often mask their true identities. He talks about how faces can be either unfair or fair to a person. For instance, do you know how far a face can take you? It can make you or break you or inflate you. Now that's some real perceptive stuff to consider. Right after is The Hunt, another spoken word piece over this idiosyncratic beat. And here he was pointing out the mindset between the hunter and the hunted and how it's actually similar. They're both participants in the hunt. Obviously, after is The Hunt, which is built around some suspenseful keys and a crunchy bass line. Now, there's a lot of social commentary here. He's talking about the warlike nature of man and how survival is essential. But we must also remember that the idea of the hunt, it's actually better than the kill. Track 17 is The Catch, and he talks about after the hunt is the catch, the grim reality that some have to return to their essence, but who gets rewarded? The hunter. And this transitions perfectly into The Thief in the Night, one of the best songs on the project that'll really make you think. First of all, I love the solemn flutes, the penetrable drums, the bleak hook, but the drums are really fire. And on this record, he's talking about preparing for death, and there is a lot of imagery here that did remind me a bit of Scarface, by the way he was talking about embracing for death and just the sad nature of the human condition. Some really powerful lines that hit close to home where just when you think you're having fun, it'll snatch you up and run. For a second, you appreciate the sun. For half a second, you appreciate the stars. For half a second, you reflect on who you are and what you were. And in a flash, it's all a blur. So I'm not gonna lie, I did get some chills listening to those bars because it really made me reflect on the importance of trying to live in the present moment, which can really be hard, especially when you have goals you want to achieve, you have deadlines, and just the chaotic nature of it every day. Then the last actual song is the title track of Book of Human Language, and it's a 7-minute bar fest where he sums up everything eloquently. It's got a jazzy head nodding instrumental. The horns did give me some 1950s jazz band vibe. Then this album officially wraps up with Afterword, which essentially contains the same instrumental from the opener, which brings things to a closure. So overall, I do have this as a 5 mic project. Well, in between a 4.5 and 5. Definitely nothing lower than a 4.5 though. I have to admit that I did enjoy revisiting this project, even though it was very abstract. It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's not easy to digest. Throughout this project, Aceyalone is really rapping like a true prophet and a poet, you know, giving the listener a lot of profound philosophical game. And there was just a lot of great emceeing all around. You had those lyrical, miracle, verbal, gymnastic moments, but Aceyalone is such a talented writer that he made this project come across as a literary masterpiece. And Mumbles did his thing in providing a bedrock of very murky, rugged jazz samples. The beats were dusty, ethereal, bleak, but they had that head nodding appeal. At the end of the day, this was a very slept on underground hip hop release from the late 90s that I do feel is an essential listen, and it's also a great jazz rap album in general. You know, it is a project that you could throw on and get lost to and just ponder on some of the deep poetry that he was dropping. My favorite tracks include The Guidelines, The Balance, The Walls and Windows, The Grandfather Clock, The Faces, The Hunt, The Thief in the Night, and Human Language. So let me know your thoughts on this project below. Do you feel this is a classic in the underground circles? But it's your boy Mixtape Moth. I am signing out. As always, is peace and blessings. Aceyalone, A Book of Human Language 1.